Have you ever entirely trusted someone, only to discover they were betraying you? That is what occurred to me. I thought I had a lovely wife and a strong marriage, but that all changed when I overheard her talking about cheating on me. At that moment, I realized I couldn't let it go. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Let's get started. I am 29 and have married Susan, 28, for 3 years. All that time, I assumed our relationship was flawless. We had some hard patches, but our relationship improved over time, and I thought we were set. Our friends even expressed jealousy about our connection. I believed it too. I thought I had hit the jackpot and discovered my soulmate. We met at a party hosted by our mutual buddy, Ethan. I knew him from work. She knew him from college. He did not attempt to set us up or anything like that. We ran into each other at the party, started talking, and things took off. She appeared to be everything I wanted in a companion. We had some common interests, so I didn't hesitate to ask her on a date. She consented, and we went on another date. 2 years later, we married. We don't have any children, though we were discussing it. She's a kindergarten teacher who has always adored children, but the timing was never right for us. She didn't make much money from her job, but I earned enough to cover our expenses. As a senior engineer for a software company, I make a lot of money. However, I frequently change jobs, which does not provide adequate security for raising a child. Susan's relationship with her sister, Rachel, could be better. They need to get along better. I'm unsure what it is, perhaps sibling rivalry, envy, or opposing personalities. They often fight. The amusing part was that they had these moments of calm where they got along for a while. It could last a few days, a month or two, but they'd always find something to be angry about. I stayed out of their arguments as much as possible. I couldn't see any use in becoming involved in their sibling turmoil. I just trusted them to handle the situation like they always did. I never imagined that I would be drawn into their dispute in a way that would destroy my life as I knew it. It began when they had another argument about God knowing what. It was worse than usual this time, with Rachel appearing to be the offended party. I'm genuinely offended. My wife refused to tell me anything about what had transpired, which was unusual given that she typically talked my ear off about such things. That gave me the idea that Susan was genuinely guilty of whatever her sister was upset about. As usual, I was unconcerned by the occurrence. I assumed they'd get over it like they always did. But then Rachel called me unexpectedly one day. That seemed unusual because the two of us talked very little. She didn't even give me a chance to say hello before saying something like, "Remember the pregnancy scare you guys had when you were dating?" She made it up. What a great way to start a conversation. Initially, I assumed I had misheard her. When I asked her to repeat herself, she said the same thing. I remained silent for a time as I attempted to digest what she had just said. My first instinct was that it was a poor joke before I realized it was an underhanded deception to exact revenge on her sister. I made my voice as stern as possible and replied, "That's not funny, Rachel." She didn't adjust her tone and insisted on telling the truth. She was correct that there had been a pregnancy scare, and I wasn't surprised that her sister was aware of it. But I couldn't believe she was making it up. What possible purpose could she have for doing this? She informed me that Susan was scared that we were over, and she tried to baby trap me into the relationship. She stated that Susan had told her that she was not ready to give up the lifestyle I had given her. At that time, the story began to make more sense. The pregnancy scare had brought us closer together as we dealt with it, but I still didn't believe it. It didn't look like anything I could see her doing. When I mentioned that there had been a positive test, Rachel didn't hesitate to declare she falsified it. She claimed she could obtain bogus pregnancy tests online that always showed a positive. This was the first I had heard of it, but a Google search later revealed that it was accurate. They are also inexpensive, costing around $5. It's another thing for guys to be aware of. I hadn't considered the notion of her making it up. Our relationship had hit a challenging period. I hadn't considered ending my relationship with her, but it was a viable option then. Then we had the pregnancy scare, complete with a positive test, and we began focusing on resolving our differences. Later, we discovered she was not pregnant, which we attributed to a faulty test. I had always thought of the pregnancy scare as an occurrence that had improved our relationship. Still, I was beginning to suspect it was more malicious than anticipated. Rachel viewed my silence as disbelief and promised to bring me proof. She then ended the call. I gazed at my phone, waiting for a text from her, dreading every moment. I wanted to know if I'd been duped, but I feared what I would find out. I couldn't see how our relationship might recover if she genuinely lied to me. What else might she have lied about? Rachel took roughly 3 minutes to send the damaging evidence. There were texts between her and my wife going back years when we were dating. They described her plan in detail, including how she feared we might break up and how she planned to remedy things. She faked a pregnancy test and boasted to her sister that her scheme had worked. I couldn't believe all I was reading. I initially thought of approaching her and asking if this was real, but I knew she would deny it. I assumed I'd need substantial proof. I was angrier than ever, but I forced myself to reason. If she lied about this, what else might she have concealed? It ended up being quite a lot. For almost a week following that, I tried to play the role of the ignorant husband. It wasn't easy, and she sensed something was amiss. We had lost our intimacy, and I wasn't as warm toward her as I had been in the past. She was upset, but I explained that it was work-related stress when she questioned it. Meanwhile, I was using every opportunity to read over all of her texts. I mean everything: social media, emails, and text messages. I'd check her texts whenever her laptop was unattended or her phone was lying on the bed while she was showering. I was also thorough. If she were lying so early in our relationship, I would have to go through years of communication. I found what I was looking for in her direct messages and texts to two of her closest pals, Stephanie and Melissa. I didn't have to go back more than a few months to find what I was looking for. My wife was having an affair. About a year ago, she told her friends that she was tired of our relationship, but couldn't give up the financial security I provided her. She mentioned a guy named James who made her feel alive and thrilled. He was the father of one of the students she had taught last year. She wanted to leave me for him, but he made less than I did. I felt terrible, but I forced myself to continue scrolling. I needed to know everything. A few months later, she laughed with her friends about how she'd fooled me. She'd been messing around with this guy for months without my realizing it. They made fun of me for being unaware, referring to me as her safety net. I had to quit reading after a while. This was not the woman I expected to marry. This person was cold and calculated even before we married. She was creating a game out of my suffering. I was astonished to learn that I was angry rather than hurt. I wasn't going to sit and take it. I stomped over to her, threw her phone into her lap, and demanded that she tell me everything about James. She didn't try to refute it because the evidence was right between us. She didn't say anything until I demanded that she explain herself. She started crying and said she never meant to harm me. She told me our relationship had become secure and boring, and she needed some excitement. James meant little to her. She'd always expected to end her relationship with him eventually. When I heard that, I exploded with rage. I hate to admit it, but I screamed at her for 10 minutes about how foolish it was and how she had wrecked our relationship. I brought up what her sister had told me, emphasizing that she had always been a liar and a user. She stood there crying, insisting that we could still save our relationship. I told her we were done and that she needed to gather her belongings and leave. It took another hour of shouting before she gathered her belongings and went. She said she'd be back in the morning so I could calm down and we could talk things out, but I'm going immediately. I'm already browsing for divorce lawyers. She is due for a rude awakening if she believes she can deceive me while keeping her safety net intact. Susan returned the following day, but I had not calmed down. I was on my way out to meet with a divorce lawyer when she approached me, appealing for the opportunity to hash things out. I did not slow down as I walked to my car. I told her there was nothing to discuss without my lawyer present. That silenced her, and I used the chance to inform her that I was going to file for divorce. Then the tears began again. I didn't let them disturb me because I knew she didn't feel bad. She only felt horrible about being caught and losing her lifeline. I got into my car and drove away. She called my phone number several times on my way to the lawyer's office, but I just let it ring. There was no need to talk to her because she couldn't talk me out of what was about to happen. She was served with the divorce papers when they were ready. She was still upset about it, but this time she was angry rather than sad. Now she was blaming me for the breakdown of our relationship. According to her, people cheat in relationships every day, but they can overcome it via conversation. It was my fault that we were getting divorced because I refused to compromise. That made me madder. That was a new level of defying accountability. We had another dispute, and I stormed off. But I knew I wouldn't be satisfied with simply getting a divorce. I wanted to break up with her, but she was now victim-blaming me and making me look horrible. I wanted to make sure she paid. I remembered her pals laughing at me in their group chat and knew just how I would handle it. I knew it was only a matter of time before she began telling additional lies to her friends. I wanted to make sure she had no pals left before that happened. Over the years, she had spoken negatively of her friends behind their backs. Most of it had been verbal, but some had been texted. So I sent each of her pals everything she had said about them, including every dirty little detail and snarky remark she had ever said. I included screenshots of what she stated wherever possible. I also included details about her cheating for good measure. The responses came very quickly: disbelief, wrath, and shock. No one appeared willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. Why should they be? She had muttered some negative things about these people behind their backs. Susan confronted me about it in less than a half hour. She was furious. Her pals were furious with her for what she had said to me about them. Some of them swore never to speak to her again. Others expressed their happiness that she was getting divorced. She accused me of being petty, vengeful, and harsh. I didn't care. This wasn't just about getting revenge, though it was, but I also wanted to expose her for who she was. If she was going to lie, deceive, and exploit others, she didn't deserve all the friends she pretended to have. I advised her to store her fury for someone who would believe her nonsense. I learned from several of her friends that she attempted to recover her image, just as I expected. She painted me as a bitter husband out to harm her reputation, but no one believed her. She might try to rewrite all she wanted, but everyone had read what she had written. Furthermore, they had witnessed her make disparaging remarks about others. She failed to win over any of them. The divorce was painful. We both fought fiercely to get as much as we could. In the end, most things went my way. I have proof of infidelity, which is significant in my state. We had no children, and she worked for herself, so I avoided paying alimony. Her job didn't pay well, but the judge thought it was adequate because she wouldn't be destitute without my income. She didn't have a support system after that. Her parents were the only people I knew who still spoke with her after the divorce. Rachel told me they were also disappointed in Susan, but couldn't dump her like everyone else. Rachel didn't want anything to do with Susan, especially after I showed her what Susan had said about her behind her back. I recognized how awful things had gone for her around 2 weeks after the divorce. That was when my ex-wife visited me. She called me repeatedly after the divorce was official, but I never answered. I had nothing to say to her about it. After all, she had repeatedly lied to me and used my money while sleeping behind my back. I remained furious toward her, but I let her in to hear her out. She had hit rock bottom. She had no friends, and her safety net had been pulled from beneath her. She began by apologizing, but those words seemed empty to me. There was no reason to suppose she was apologizing for anything other than karma slapping her square in the face. I was already regretting talking to her because listening to her whine was so dull. After she finished apologizing, she began pleading with me to accept her back. She admitted that she had made a mistake and was willing to reform. She claimed she no longer cared about the money and was only concerned with repairing our relationship. When I asked her about James, she became quiet for a time. She stated that things with him were over and that she was committed to regaining my trust so we could begin again. I told her she could have a fresh start with anybody she wanted, but I wouldn't be involved. The tears flowed again, which infuriated me. I had watched the movie before and was tired of it. She'd start crying to manipulate me and make me feel sorry for her when she ran out of options. I was not going to entertain this any longer. I led her back to the door and encouraged her to get on with her life, whether it was with James or whatever unfortunate sucker she met next. She made one final try on me, assuring me that I was the only person she had ever truly loved. I didn't respond to that. I closed and shut the door behind her. It was the last time I saw her. I'm determined to maintain no communication with her. I don't even talk to her family anymore. I don't feel sorry for her or regret what I did. I restored my self-esteem after she had taken advantage of me for so long. I protected my finances and what I held. More importantly, I had revealed her for who she was and prevented her from manipulating the story to her advantage. After all that, I've made an effort to concentrate on myself. I contributed generously to her for so many years that I forgot to care for myself. I've been devoting myself to my job and self-development. I've taken the time to reconnect with my pastime of drone piloting. The experience was quite unpleasant, but I'm grateful that my eyes were eventually awakened to the truth. Better late than never. That concludes today's video. If you love the tale and want to see more of this type of stuff, please like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to enable the notification bell so you don't miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Please tell us what you think about today's story or share your experiences. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.